Tonight on KQED Newsroom, COVID-19 expert Dr. Peter Chin Hong on the latest twist in the pandemic as the Omicron variant lands in California. Plus, how the state is preparing for a potential influx of women seeking abortion services as the Supreme Court signals it may overturn Roe v. Wade. And we tour a mysterious home decked out in holiday decor for this week's edition of Something Beautiful. Coming to you from KQED headquarters in San Francisco this Friday, December 3rd, 2021. Hello and welcome to the show. This is KQED Newsroom. I'm Priya David Clemens. We're going to take a deep dive into the Omicron variant with our special guest in a moment. But first, let's take a look at some of the other top stories in California in our Friday 5. Get ready to conserve more water. Experts project California's severe drought will continue for a third year. State officials announced this week they are slashing the amount of water they'll provide from the State Water Project. That's the massive water system that crisscrosses the state and serves 27 million residents. So this means we're going to have enough water to drink and to wash with, but not enough to irrigate fields or water lawns. Gun control advocates notched a win this week as a court upheld California's ban on firearm magazines with more than 10 rounds of ammunition. The appeals court ruled the law doesn't interfere with the right to self-defense and is a reasonable effort to reduce the devastating damage from mass shootings. Gun rights advocates say they'll appeal the ruling, which could go to the U.S. Supreme Court. As homicides continue to rise in Oakland, Mayor Libby Schaaf is urging the city council to increase funding to the police department. The council had previously prioritized funding for social services. Schaaf says the police department is understaffed and needs the money to quickly hire more officers.
There is nothing progressive about unbridled gun violence. This is what Oaklanders want, a comprehensive and effective approach to safety, and that includes adequate police staffing.
In economic news, cash registers have been ringing across the state. California reported an all-time high of $216 billion in taxable sales for just the second quarter of this year. That is nearly a 40% increase from the same period of last year and 17% more than sales in 2019, before the pandemic started. The additional tax revenue is expected to provide another major budget surplus for the state in the coming fiscal year. And last, in the Bay Area tech scene, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey has stepped down. He'll be replaced by Parag Agrawal. Dorsey will remain CEO of the financial firm Square, which is changing its corporate name to Block. And Salesforce promoted Brett Taylor as co-CEO with founder Mark Benioff. And that's this week's Friday 5. We'll discuss this week's state political news soon. But first, let's talk about COVID. With the discovery of the Omicron coronavirus variant in San Francisco this week, public health officials are urging people to get booster vaccinations and wear masks indoors. There's still a lot we don't know about the variant, but experts warn that it could evade vaccines, spread quickly, and slow the country's ability to end the pandemic. Joining me now to talk about what this means for California is Dr. Peter Chin Hong, a professor of medicine and an infectious disease specialist at the University of California, San Francisco. Dr. Chin Hong, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me on, Priya.
Yeah, glad to have you here in studio as well. Let's start by reviewing what we know about the Omicron variant. It hasn't been very long that it's been out, but over this past week, what have we learned about its behavior?
So I think there are two main red flags that we've learned about Omicron, and those two red flags have made everyone in a tizzy. These are the fact that it seems very, very transmissible. I mean, South Africa was kind of minding its own business, about 200 to 300 cases a day. All of a sudden, it's up to almost 8,000 or 9,000 cases a day. So they began investigating it. It was in one main province where Johannesburg is, called Gauteng. And it turns out that there was this new variant that was found that was eclipsing Delta. South Africa was a Delta country before. So that's the first red flag. And then biologically, there are a lot of things that make scientists nervous. Mainly, there's so many mutations, 50 mutations. Delta only has less than 20. 10 of these are on the business end of the spike protein, where it attaches to cells to enter our bodies. And because the spike protein has so many mutations, probably 30 in all, we are worried that the body won't recognize, the antibodies in our bodies won't recognize the spike protein anymore because it's so misshapen, it's so mutated. And that's why we worry that both it's transmissible and that it's evading vaccines potentially.
Okay. So, the governor of California and the president of the United States have both indicated that they're not looking at further lockdowns because of this variant. How can they make that decision when so little is known?
Well, I think because we have a lot of trust in our vaccines, we have a lot of trust in science. The people of California are extremely COVID street smart. We know what to do. We've been through this drill so many times, especially last winter.
But yet you just said that it could be evading the vaccines.
Yeah, it could be evading the vaccines for infection. It depends on what our goalposts are. If you want to prevent infection, we may not be as well equipped with not getting a booster or even with some boosting. But if we want to prevent the outcome that I care most about, the golden apple, which is severe disease, hospitalization, and death, I'm very confident that our current vaccines will do a splendid job of that.
Interesting. So it may not prevent infection, but the vaccines you think will kick in and fight the Omicron variant within our systems.
Yeah, so I think of it like the enemy is coming into, trying to get into your house. Maybe it's coming into the front gates, and that's when your antibodies wane. But when it comes into the house, you have this super amazing alarm system that just kicks the enemy out. And those are the T cells, the other parts of the immune system that remain intact and don't care what your spike protein looks like.
And the first indications we have seem to be that the Omicron variant may not cause very severe illness. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes, definitely. In the early reports from South Africa, of course, South Africa may not be exactly like the United States, like California, I'll get to that in a second, is that the symptoms that patients have had are very mild and very typical. So, feeling fatigue, maybe a high heart rate, a headache, but no major sore throat, no loss of taste and smell, and they pretty much go away. But South Africa is different from California. It's a younger population. It's not as many comorbidities. But at the other hand, it's more unvaccinated, 25% versus 60, 70% depending on where you go.
25% are vaccinated
yes,
in South Africa versus here in the United States, 60 to 70. Yeah. So, let's get to sort of that vaccine inequality around the world. I want to point to this variant has been predicted for a while, in that academic researchers, scientists have been saying, listen, unless we get everyone vaccinated, there will be more variants that come up. And let's throw up a map here to take a look right now. This is from the World Health Organization. It's a map of what the vaccinations look like around the world. And you can see in the middle, Africa is definitely far less vaccinated than the rest of the world. The actual statistics are this. Low-income countries, most of which are in Africa, have received just 0.6% of the nearly 8 billion shots that have been administered, and only 7% of Africans have been vaccinated. So in addition to sort of these moral questions about vaccine inequality, how does that foster these new variants coming into play?
Yes, so it's like sliding doors or Groundhog Day, because we are going to see variants over and over and over again until we deal with the issue, the thorny issue of vaccine equity. And that's because every 2 weeks you have a new variant being created.
Is that right?
And only some of them rise to the rogues gallery of variants. Only some of them are in the most wanted lists. But every time you have a transmission event, there's a chance that this virus making a copy of itself, it's like you have a crummy photocopy machine and the copy isn't exactly the same. And that way that the virus evolves may not be intentional, but it serves in its best interest overall to evolve and to shapeshift over time.
There's also been this question of whether or not it's ethical for those of us in Western countries to get booster vaccinations when so many others in other countries haven't gotten a first dose. The World Health Organization has asked for those doses to be sent to these other countries. What are your thoughts about that?
I think my answer to that question is yes and yes, meaning that I think we need to boost our populations. We have the boosters available. These vaccines expire at some period in time. It comes out of a different pantry from the vaccines allocated to the rest of the world. And sure, if we had a beautiful distribution system, or like, Project Open Hand, where, you have extra food and that food goes immediately to somebody else who might need it, that may work, but it doesn't work, unfortunately, like that. There are other barriers too in the developed world. For example, storage capabilities and vaccine hesitancy is actually not just a US thing. It's a thing that's widespread over the world, and that's really because of very similar issues that people are wary of clinical research, wary of science, and there have been lots of conspiracy theories, even in my own part of the world, which is the Caribbean.
You know, we have that issue here in California as well. We think of it as, one state, but we are very different in different parts of the state. The Central Valley is being affected by COVID right now, far more than the urban centers here in San Francisco or in LA. Could you speak to that disparity within California?
Yes, definitely. So the Central Valley is still undergoing a big Delta surge. I mean, we think about California as being monolithic, Governor Newsom, everybody holding hands. We're all singing the praises and aligning science and politics, but that's not true in all parts of California. In the Central Valley, they have one of the most, hesitant populations when it comes to vaccines. I think Governor Newsom just a few days ago was trying to promote boosters by being in the San Joaquin Valley at one of the schools, really speaking to that need for that population to get in. And we may be riding this wave of previous immunity to natural infection that's boosting community immunity. But if Omicron comes in, we do know from South Africa that reinfection is definitely a thing. That natural immunity force field may go away, and only the people with vaccine immunity may be left standing.
All right. Many others out there want to know, what does this mean for our holiday plans? So tell us, from your mouth as an expert who's been studying COVID and knows infectious diseases, what are your holiday plans, and are you planning to make any changes to them?
So I subscribe to the Dr. Fauci religion, and like he says, don't panic about it. Myself, I'm still planning to visit my family in the East Coast in New York. I'm going to take a plane with confidence. I'm boosted, so I feel like almost invincible. I know I'm not going to get very ill, even if I get a breakthrough infection with Omicron. But with Delta, I know that being recently boosted, I'm not going to even get infected. I'm COVID smart, being a Californian, so I'm going to wear my mask on the plane and in crowded situations. And I'll hug my family, I hug my close friends with wild abandon, because we've all given up so much during this pandemic.
Any thoughts about holiday parties and gatherings of people who are not family coming together unmasked?
Yeah, so I think about the ABCDs of holiday planning. So A is to be aware of who's coming, what your situation is. Are there immunocompromised and elderly people who are unboosted in the home? B is for just getting boosted or vaccinated if you haven't. C is for thinking about your kids, including vaccination in that population. D is for diagnostic tests. I think people have been including more rapid screening prior to family reunions to just give another layer of confidence. It doesn't mean that the test is super sensitive, but it is really great at predicting transmissibility. So if you're negative, at least for that family event, you're going to be good. And I guess I can throw in an E, which is everything else. Don't forget your mask. Don't forget your flu shot.
All right. Dr. Peter Chin Hong from UCSF, thank you for your time, for your advice about how we should navigate these next few weeks going into the holiday season. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Priya. It's great being in the studio.
As a rash of burglaries plague retailers, city leaders are looking for ways to counteract the crime rings. And Californians have been closely watching a Supreme Court hearing that could affect abortion rights nationwide. Joining us now to discuss these and other political stories this week are KQED politics and government reporters Guy Marzorati and Katie Orr. Hello to you both.
Great to be here.
Hi.
All right, so Katie, let's start national. The Supreme Court appears to be leaning towards weakening or even overturning the Roe v. Wade decision on abortion. And you've reported this week on how the case is playing out here in California. Tell us about that.
Well, as you know, California is a more abortion-friendly state than other states in the country. And they being providers and abortion advocates and lawmakers, that should Roe v. Wade be overturned, we'll see an increase in the number of women coming to this state to get an abortion because they might not be able to get one in their home state. A recent study estimated that we could see a nearly 3,000% increase in the number of women who come here.
That's huge.
Absolutely. And the state is now convening a council called the Future of Abortion Council to look at potential barriers that those women face, as well as women living in California face, and what the state can do to help them overcome those hurdles.
I mean, I think to Katie's point, the real focus for lawmakers here is not so much abortion access in laws, but funding for that abortion access. We're already hearing from groups like Planned Parenthood in California saying, maybe the legislature should look at funding services for those women arriving in California, from the moment they arrive at our airports. I think what's without a doubt is if this case ends up overturning Roe, you are going to see this fracturing of abortion laws across the country that will put more pressure on states like California to provide those services going forward.
All right. Well, turning to a different topic, we saw some very stunning scenes of looting last weekend. Mobs of people broke into stores here in the Bay Area and in Southern California. They stole hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods. Guy, talk us through what you were seeing in terms of a civic response from leadership.
Well, I think right away the response you heard from mayors and city councils here in the Bay Area was hire more police. That was kind of the initial reaction. We've heard it this week. Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf saying she wants to see additional police academies, at least 2 going forward. Councilwoman Sheng Tao saying she'd like to see another police academy and then maybe spending some of that money on recruitment nationwide, bringing in officers from other departments to Oakland. In Walnut Creek, where we saw that, large-scale retail theft at Nordstrom's, the council is actually taking coronavirus pandemic relief dollars from the federal government, $2 million to hire more police officers. So that's been, without a doubt, the initial reaction, but I don't think everyone's on board with that. I spoke to Brandon Woods, the Alameda County Public Defender, and he said this is kind of the initial reaction you'd expect. Let's hire more police officers. It's what we've done in the past, but it might not get at the root causes of what's actually causing these kind of crimes.
Well, Katie, I want to bring you in here for a moment. I know, Guy, you've been doing a lot of work on this week, but Katie, I think it's interesting as we're talking generally about this concept of defund the police. And now we're seeing these police departments and civic leaders calling for increased police presence. What are you hearing about all of this?
Well, it just shows you how quickly the political tide and the pendulum can swing, right? As you mentioned, defund the police has sort of been the mantra call for those on the left for the past couple years. And now we're seeing that there's a call for increased police presence. Now, of course, when we say defund the police, that doesn't mean take money away and, put it nowhere. It means give it to, organizations that can help with like mental health and things like that. But, if I'm Attorney General Rob Bonta, I am worried about all of this looting, of course, for a safety perspective, but also because of his political future. He was appointed. He is running for office again, and he does not want this rash of burglaries and robberies to continue on his watch, because he could pay a price for it at the polls, as could Gavin Newsom.
And staying with you for a moment, Katie, San Francisco's District Attorney Chesa Boudin has announced felony looting charges for 9 of the people who were arrested. But there does seem to be some legal concern that those charges may not stick. Can you tell us why that is?
Yeah, this is really interesting. He's allowed to charge these people with looting because California is currently under a state of emergency due to the COVID pandemic. Normally, the looting charge related to a state of emergency might be something like a wildfire or an earthquake or a riot, something like that. So because he's using the current pandemic emergency, which is going on 2 years, he might have a harder time making the connection between the actual state of emergency and the crimes that these people are alleged to have committed.
Yeah, and as we were just hearing from Guy, there has been continuing growing violence in Oakland. The city has now had 128 homicides so far this year, including one last weekend of a security guard who was protecting a journalist who was working on a report at the time. Oakland's police chief, LaRon Armstrong, was recently on the show, and here's what he told us about his staffing shortages.
Our city has grown astronomically over the last 10 years, and this department is much smaller than it was 10 years ago. And so we are facing tremendous challenges with meeting the calls from our community. the calls to our 911 system, the requests that community members have for us to be more present, more on the ground, walking in our community. There's a lot of things we would like to do, but we're unable to do them because we just don't have the officers.
So on Monday morning this week, following that violence last weekend, Mayor Libby Schaaf called for increased police funding, and the city council is going to be taking up her recommendation next week. Guy, what does this tell you about the ethos and the feeling in Oakland when at one point the city council had really worked to put more of that money into social services instead of funding the police?
Right. I think in many ways, step back, we have to acknowledge Oakland police funding did go up this year, right? There was, debates around the budget. Libby Schaaf wanted more in the budget for the police than the council ultimately appropriated. At the end of the day, the funding for the police department did go up this year. And I think, to your point, it is a critical moment for, local council members and mayors, public officials surrounding this conversation around policing and safety, because for many years they've made a point to really, in a lot of spaces, advocate for alternatives to policing. Now the rubber is really hitting the road. And to Katie's point, you are hearing pressure from constituents around this increase in homicides in Oakland. It'll be interesting to see, how much at the end of the day, these lawmakers are going to say it's not zero sum, we can do both, but budgets are zero sum, and you do have to make choices around these investments. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see which way this direction goes from now.
It makes me think also California is looking at another budget surplus next year, so it'll be interesting to see if any of this money ends up going towards law enforcement. Let's turn to the state assembly right now. Katie, a Democratic member of the state assembly, announced this week he's going to be retiring, Jim Fraser from Fairfield. Can you tell us about the assembly changes you're seeing recently and what's expected?
Right. Assemblyman Fraser is just one of a handful of members who is leaving for a variety of reasons and going to different positions. It's important to note that he's from the class of 2012, which was the first class of lawmakers that could stay in their seat for 12 years. They had changed term limits. And so, of course, we're coming up to the end of that. And so you're seeing a lot of lawmakers who only have, perhaps 2 or 3 years left in the assembly, thinking about what their next step is going to be. They can't run for state legislature again. So you're seeing people like Jim Fraser leave to go take a job in the transportation industry, where he has been connected. He's been head of the Assembly Transportation Committee for years. He is not anymore, but he has been. You see people running for Congress and for the LA Board of Supervisors. There was a member who was appointed to a judgeship in California. So you're seeing a lot of people thinking about the next step in their career. And I feel like this will continue to happen as more members come up on their 2014 term out date.
And Priya, I've got to add on to this redistricting, right? These new lines are being drawn in a lot of cases. Legislators, they might not want to call U-Haul and pack up and move just for 2 more years in the legislature. I do think this dynamic will be interesting to watch in a potential second term of Governor Gavin Newsom. He might be in office with a vastly different legislature. There's already been a lot of debate over the balance of power between the executive and the legislature. That balance could shift even more towards Newsom if he's dealing with a lot more freshman lawmakers.
Interesting. Do you expect it to stay strongly Democratic, however?
Yeah, absolutely. I think no matter how these maps end up, it's going to be a largely, Democratic control, probably even a continuation of a supermajority control that we've seen in both houses. But it does make a difference to have lawmakers with, years of experience in these committees versus, kind of freshmen coming in.
I want to wrap around to the big story this week, which was, of course, the Omicron variant. And Katie, there in Sacramento, can you talk to us about what you're hearing from the governor? He has signaled that he is not going to be taking steps to put into place another lockdown. How can he make that decision this quickly? What are you hearing from him?
Well, of course, as the science comes out, and if we see that this variant is, more transmissible, more dangerous for society, of course, he would maybe have to take those steps. But at this moment, he does not want to do that. He just came out of 2 other strands of the coronavirus. He just survived a recall. He's up for re-election next year. He does not want to be dealing with the Delta variant, the Omicron variant. He's got enough on his plate. And so for now, he's trying to just tell people, get vaccinated, get your booster shot, wear your mask, you'll be okay. He's not projecting the need to take any drastic steps right now because he knows that that is the last thing voters want to hear from him.
All right. Well, always a pleasure to speak with both of you. Katie Orr out of our Sacramento Bureau, Guy Marzorati here at KQED Studios today with us. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For tonight's edition of Something Beautiful, we wander through a mansion in San Jose that has more than 160 rooms. Decked out for the holidays, Victorian traditions shine this time of year at the Winchester Mystery House. And that's the slightly spooky yet festive end of our show for tonight. Next week, join us for a special report about plastic pollution and what California is doing to fight it.
Every minute, 1 million plastic bags get used around the world, and most bags get used for only 15 minutes. 10 million tons of discarded plastic end up in the ocean every year. That's about 1 garbage truckload every minute.
When we got around the bend, it looked like the sand was rainbow colored, and when we got down to the beach, it was actually microplastics.
Promises that recycling plastic will keep it from becoming litter are wearing thin.
We all think that we've done our part when we take the plastic bottle and put it into the blue bin, assuming, hey, our job is done.
We'll learn more next week. If you want to get a look behind the scenes, then please hang out with us online too. KQED Newsroom is on Twitter and Facebook, or you can email us at knr@kqed.org. You can always reach me on Twitter at Priya D. Clemens. Have a great weekend.